Okay, so you've almost definitely heard of the Winchester Mystery House, right? This huge, kind of bizarre mansion. The story goes it was built nonstop for almost 40 years by this grieving heiress. And why? Well, she was supposedly haunted by the ghosts of every single person killed by a Winchester rifle. But what if I told you that whole story is, well, it's just a story, and the real truth is way more interesting than any ghost?
Yeah, the popular myth. It paints this picture of Sarah Winchester as this, haunted, superstitious woman. She's just endlessly building this maze of a house, right? With stairways that go nowhere and doors that open up into just thin air. And it was all to confuse these angry ghosts. It's an amazing story for sure. Perfect for a horror movie. But it's just not what happened.
So, the legend says that after her husband died, she went to a psychic who told her, "You're cursed. You have to move west and build a house for all the spirits." And here's the kicker. As long as she kept building, she'd live. I mean, it's a classic ghost story, right? All about guilt and madness and ghosts. But if we really want to understand the house, we got to understand the woman behind it.
All right, so let's push the ghost story aside for a minute and meet the real person here. Her name was Sarah Lockwood Pardee, and she wasn't born into some spooky, haunted world. No, she was born into a world of learning, of progressive thinking, and, unfortunately, a world that would later be filled with just unimaginable tragedy.
Yeah, long before anyone called her the haunted heiress, she was just Sally. She was a wife, a mother, and she was tiny, by the way, under 5 feet tall. She and her husband, William, they were totally passionate about architecture and design. And that passion, it would absolutely define her entire life. Just not in the creepy way the legends want you to believe.
I mean, just look at this timeline. Look at how fast this all happened. In a little more than a decade, Sarah lost her only child, both of her parents, her father-in-law, her husband, and her sister. This wasn't some supernatural curse. This was a tidal wave of real human grief that left her a widow and a very, very wealthy one at only 40 years old.
Okay, so why California? Why move all the way out west? It had nothing to do with a psychic. It was her doctor. He told her to go. See, she had this awful, debilitating rheumatoid arthritis, and he thought the warmer, drier climate would help. So her move was all about medicine, not mediums.
And that, of course, brings us to the house. The story of why it was built has been twisted into this tale of obsession and fear and ghosts. But when you actually look at the facts, a totally different picture comes into focus. One of a passionate hobby, a creative outlet, and a really sharp, practical mind.
First things first, she never, ever called it the Winchester Mystery House. That's a modern name. To her, it was Llanada Villa, and that wasn't some spooky name to keep ghosts happy. It was named after a place she and William had visited in Spain. It was a name all about love and memory, not fear.
So why did she keep building? Well, a few reasons. For one, it was a hobby she'd started with her husband. It also created steady jobs for tons of local craftspeople. Plus, she was basically a self-taught architect. She was reading all the big design journals and just experimenting. And as her arthritis got worse, a lot of the additions, like those staircases with the really short steps, were just practical changes to help her get around.
Okay, I know what you're thinking. But what about the weird stuff? The doors that open to nowhere, the stairs that just go straight into a ceiling? I mean, that's the heart of the myth, right? That's the so-called proof that she was crazy. Well, the real explanation is a lot more, down to earth.
The real culprit? It wasn't a ghost. It was geology. The huge 1906 San Francisco earthquake, it completely wrecked her house. A 7-story tower just collapsed. The entire top floor of the main building was basically destroyed. So the house you visit today is, in a lot of ways, a ruin.
So after the earthquake, Sarah had all the dangerous stuff cleared away, for safety. But she never did the massive, super expensive repairs to rebuild everything that was lost. So those famous doors that open to nowhere, they used to open onto balconies that just aren't there anymore. And the stairs that lead to a ceiling, they used to lead to a floor that's gone. They're not traps for spirits, they're literally the scars of a natural disaster.
And listen to this. This is from a letter she wrote years before the earthquake even happened. She's talking about a renovation and says that a hall was too dark and people were tripping on the stairs, so safety demanded something to be done. Does that sound like a haunted visionary? No, that sounds like a practical homeowner.
And that practical mindset went way beyond just the house. Because when you get past this caricature of a crazy, reclusive woman, you find the real Sarah Winchester was sharp. She was intelligent.
She was incredibly generous, and she was anything but cut off from the real world. I mean, far from being irrational, the woman was a brilliant financial manager. Her advisor died, so she just took over her own finances. She made smart investments in real estate, buying up land near the brand new Stanford University because she knew it would be valuable. This wasn't someone just sitting on a fortune, she was actively growing it.
It's just such a massive disconnect, isn't it? The public story was of this miserly, crazy hermit. But the people who actually knew her, her family, her staff, her lawyer, they all described a kind, whip-smart woman who quietly took care of everyone around her. She wasn't hiding from ghosts. She was a private person trying to deal with chronic pain and a whole lot of grief.
Okay, now look at this number. Over $1 million. We have to remember, in the early 1900s, that was an absolutely insane amount of money. So, where did it go?
She gave it away, and she did it anonymously. The legend paints this picture of a woman just trapped in this cycle of pointless, crazy building. But the reality is she was engaged in one of the most profound acts of, constructive grieving I've ever heard of. Over a decade, she secretly funded a cutting-edge hospital for tuberculosis patients, the same disease that took her husband, and she named it after him.
So if none of this ghost stuff is real, then where did it all come from? How did this story get so big? Well, the answer is actually pretty simple, and it has nothing to do with ghosts. It has everything to do with money.
So here's the breakdown. Sure, there were some local rumors while she was alive, but they really exploded after she died in 1922. The new owners who bought the house saw a gold mine. They opened it up for tours just 6 months later and went all in on the spookiest rumors they could find. In fact, a lot of the mysterious stuff, like her so-called obsession with the number 13, that was all made up, even added to the house by the new owners just to sell more tickets.
And hey, you don't have to take my word for it. This quote is from the son of Sarah's lawyer, a man who knew the family well. He said that the whole idea that she had hallucinations or was crazy was, and I quote, all bunk. The people who really knew her were just heartbroken that her life's passion project was being turned into a cheap tourist trap.
So when you actually look at the evidence, the real Sarah Winchester wasn't defined by ghosts at all. She was defined by grief, yes, but also by intelligence, by creativity. She was a private woman who channeled her incredible sadness and her massive fortune into two things: a lifelong passion for architecture and these quiet, amazing acts of kindness. And really, that just leaves us with one final thought. Sarah Winchester's entire life story was basically rewritten from the ground up just to sell tickets. And it kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many other histories, how many other stories that we all think we know are really just the most entertaining, most marketable version of the truth?